The sun was still high when he crossed the street with slow steps, dragging his worn-out sandals against the hot asphalt. Anyone watching from afar wouldn't give him a second look. Clothes stained with old grease, the smell of someone who had slept outside clinging to him like an invisible mark, and that lost gaze we often see in the city's invisible ones. But there was something strange, almost unsettling about this man. A detail hard to explain. Inside those tired eyes, there was a kind of steadiness, an old flame that didn't match the rest. He stopped in front of Premium Motors, one of the most expensive shops in town. Inside, 3 mechanics were already bent over a silver Mercedes C300. The engine refused to start. The owner of the car, a refined woman named Mariana, leaned against the wall, arms crossed, cell phone squeezed in her sweaty hand. She had an important meeting in a few hours, and this setback felt like a nightmare. That was when the man stepped inside. Conversation ceased for a moment, just long enough for everyone to glance at him with that automatic judgment we pretend we don't make. He walked closer to the group, cleared his throat and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Excuse me, could I take a look at the engine?" The reaction was immediate. A dry laugh from Bruno, the shop's boss. "Take a look? Do you even understand Mercedes?" Claudio, another mechanic, tried to hold back his laugh, but added, "Buddy, this isn't some donkey cart. It's a C300 turbo engine. Only specialists touch this." The man didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head and calmly replied, "I know exactly what model it is, and I also know the problem isn't where you're looking." The laughter grew. Roberto, the third mechanic, almost choked from laughing. "Look at that, Professor Gadget over here. Gonna teach us now?" Mariana, impatient, ran her hand through her hair. "Please, we don't have time for jokes." The man took one step forward, voice still calm. "If I fix the problem, I don't want money. Just a sandwich." The entire shop fell silent. The mechanics exchanged incredulous looks. Mariana frowned, unsure whether to laugh or throw the stranger out. A sandwich? It sounded like a joke, but his confidence didn't break. He wasn't begging. He wasn't pleading. He simply offered a deal, skill in exchange for food. Bruno shook his head, mocking. "You're kidding, right? You think you'll fix in minutes what we've been struggling with for hours?" The man gave a faint smile, weary yet steady. "Give me 15 minutes." It was absurd, and yet there was something magnetic about the scene, as if deep down everyone knew they were about to witness something out of the ordinary. They just didn't want to admit it. And that's how it began. The story of a stranger who, in a matter of minutes, would turn mockery into silence. A story proving that a man's worth isn't in the clothes he wears, but in the fire he still carries inside. And for those who laughed first, only one question would remain echoing in their minds. Who, after all, was this man? Premium Motors looked like a glass aquarium in the middle of the hot afternoon, light pouring in from every angle, chrome reflections, the metallic clatter of tools, the hum of compressors, the smell of fresh oil mixed with stale coffee. The radio played softly, trying to mask the tension no one dared admit. In the central bay, the Mercedes C300 stood open, like a stubborn animal refusing to cooperate. Bruno, the shop's boss, had firm hands and an even firmer pride. He was known as the guy who could solve the unsolvable. But today, the problem had a name and surname. An engine that would start but without strength, as if something invisible were choking its throat. Claudio was his right hand, methodical, organized, the kind who noted every talk and every step. Roberto, the third mechanic, was quicker with his phone than with a ratchet. He filmed everything, always for documentation and for the socials. Mariana watched the clock on her wrist like it was an enemy. An entrepreneur with calm speech and objective eyes. She hated delays. Her meeting with investors was at 6. 6 in her head didn't mean around 6. It meant 6. Every passing minute showed her the image of herself walking into that boardroom with excuses. And she hated that picture. New spark plugs, new filters, injectors cleaned. Claudio listed, like reciting a mantra. Fuel pressure's fine. T-maps responding. Throttle bodies clean, Bruno added, trying to hide his irritation. This is video gold, Roberto muttered, already recording the Mercedes badge. The engine would start, but it coughed. It climbed to 2,000 RPM, then dropped abruptly, as if the ECU itself was saying enough. It was the kind of fault that humiliated veterans, because there was no broken part in hand to show the customer, only behavior. And when you don't understand behavior, it feels like mockery. If I reschedule the meeting, I lose my window, Mariana said, half to herself, half to everyone. We'll fix it, Bruno answered automatically, like trying harder to convince himself than her. On the margins of the scene, the man who had just entered watched like he was reading an old map. He didn't touch, didn't intrude, just observed. The slight tremor of the engine bay at idle, the rhythm of the cooling fan, the transient vibration when Bruno tapped the gas, the dry sound from the head that died before turning into power. In those details was a language few spoke. He spoke it. Mariana distrusted him, but distrusted the delay more. What weighed heavier? The dirty clothes, the request for food, or the memory buried deep that sometimes true skill wears disguises? She closed her eyes for a second, breathed, then opened them. How much longer, Bruno? Half an hour. 40 minutes, he blurted, staring at nothing. Nothing didn't answer. The shop ran on small rituals. Claudio lined up tools on a rubber mat. Bruno wiped his hands on a grey rag that had no salvation left. Roberto refreshed old videos, hoping irrationally for luck. Outside, the asphalt trembled under the heat. Inside, it trembled under anxiety. The man stepped forward just once, like dipping a toe in the water. Up close, those tired eyes came into focus. Not vagueness, but focus. The kind of focus that sees cause where others see symptoms. If it's not mechanical, Claudio began. It's electronic, the man finished without raising his voice. Bruno clenched his jaw, irritated at the coincidence of reasoning. Of course he knew it could be electronic, but electronic was an ocean. Sensors, actuators, wiring, ground, ECU. Where to start? And worse, how to admit it in front of an impatient client and a stranger who smelled of the streets. Look, friend, Bruno said, trying to sound firm. We're in the middle of a process. You can't just... 15 minutes, the man repeated. If I'm wrong, I leave. If I'm right, I eat. Roberto tilted his phone, thrilled. 15 minutes was a perfect hook. Internet audiences loved countdowns. Real-life clients didn't. Mariana locked eyes with him for a second too long. In that second she saw the clock, the boardroom, the risk, and something else she couldn't name. Maybe an old memory of her father saying, "Every engine has its own voice." She hadn't thought of that in years. It came back now. "If you make it worse, I pay the price," she asked. "If I make it worse, I disappear." He answered simply, "But I won't make it worse." Bruno let out a short laugh, meant to be disdain, but sounded like defense. Claudio involuntarily shifted aside at the fender. Roberto stepped closer, vulture-curious, not out of malice, but habit. "I need an OBD scanner that reads live data," the man said. "We've got one," Bruno answered. "A good one," he corrected, almost smiling. Silence. Mariana raised her hand, cutting hesitation. Bring him what he asked. The drawers screeched on their rails, breaking the spell of the moment. Roberto adjusted his framing. Claudio pulled the cable. Bruno, without admitting it aloud, felt curiosity winning a piece of his pride. The entire shop held its breath, not for the arrival of a miracle, but for the arrival of a test. Outside, the sun marched on mercilessly. Inside, time decided to move slower. And it was in that interval, between one click of a tool and the next, that the game began to change. The scanner was brought in a black case, still covered with dust from sitting unused for too long. Claudio set it on the hood with a mix of disbelief and expectation. Bruno crossed his arms, forehead damp with sweat, ready to sneer at the first mistake. Roberto, on the other hand, already clutched his phone like an invisible trophy. If the stranger failed, the video would spark laughter. If he succeeded, it would bring views. Either way, he would win. The man approached calmly, as if he had known this device for years. He didn't fumble with the cables, didn't hesitate with the confusing menus on the monochrome screen. His fingers moved with the precision of someone who had repeated these gestures countless times. The contrast was shocking. Torn clothes, worn-out sandals, yet movements of a seasoned specialist. "Is the magic show about to start?" Roberto mocked, recording him. No one answered. The scanner beeped, spitting out codes. Numbers and parameters filled the screen, the kind even Bruno, with his years of experience, would take time to interpret. But the man didn't. He read them as if they were simple sentences. "Camshaft position sensor," he murmured, almost to himself. "Intermittent signal. The ECU is cutting injection as a safety measure." Claudio frowned. That would explain the loss of power. Bruno clenched his jaw. Could be coincidence. It's not coincidence. The man's tone was firm, but not aggressive. The sound already pointed to it. The scanner only confirmed. Mariana stepped closer, intrigued. She was watching not only what he did, but how. It was different. There was no anxious improvisation of an amateur, nor the arrogance of someone trying to show off. There was focus. It was like watching a surgeon in front of an open heart. "And can you fix it?" she asked, her voice calmer now. "I need to recalibrate the parameters. Reset the ECU. It'll take a few minutes." "And if it doesn't work?" Bruno jumped in, clinging to the chance to prove himself superior. "If it doesn't work, I don't eat." He shrugged. "You lose nothing." Mariana glanced at her watch again. The meeting was drawing closer. Would she risk it? Risk wasn't usually her style, but right then, not risking seemed impossible. "Do it!" She gave her approval. The shop sank into a strange silence, almost reverent. The man connected the cable, navigated the commands as if he were at home. His fingers were quick, but never nervous. Every step was watched closely. By the mechanics, Mariana, even 2 clients who had stopped at the door, drawn by the scene. Then for a brief moment he closed his eyes, just listening to the Mercedes's uneven idle, as if the car were whispering secrets. When he opened them, the decision was already made. He adjusted, confirmed, reset. Done. He disconnected the device and set it down carefully, as though it weren't his, but still precious. "Try it now." Bruno hesitated, as if trusting this was too much of a risk. But under everyone's gaze, he climbed into the car and turned the key. The engine started smoothly, without the previous stutter. He pressed the gas, and the roar responded cleanly, fully, as if it had been rejuvenated. The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter before. Claudio's eyes went wide. Roberto, almost unconsciously, lowered his phone. Mariana brought a hand to her mouth, stunned. "It's perfect," she whispered. Bruno shut it off and started it again, repeating the test, as if trying to make sure it wasn't luck. The result was the same. Full power. "How did you—" he began, but the sentence died in the air. The man simply stepped back, handing the scanner to Claudio. "Problem solved." Roberto, still holding his phone, muttered, "This is going to blow up online." But no one laughed. No one mocked, because in that moment they all knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. And for the first time, the question that would echo long after was asked silently by everyone. Who was this man, really? The Mercedes purred quietly, like a predator finally tamed. But the silence that filled the shop wasn't relief. It was tension. Because every pair of eyes, including Mariana's, was fixed on the man who had just performed the impossible. Bruno got out of the car, his pride in shambles, face red from anger and humiliation. He didn't want to admit it, but the truth was carved in the sound of that engine. The stranger was right. That was luck. He forced a laugh, though his voice trembled. Anyone could have figured it out with a scanner. The man looked at him calmly without answering. His silence spoke louder than any argument. Roberto, unable to contain himself, lifted the phone again. Luck or not, this deserves to go online. People are gonna eat this up. Stop it, Roberto. Mariana's tone was firm. She had gone from skeptical to curious, and now something deeper stirred inside her. Respect. Claudio broke the silence. I've never seen anyone diagnosed so fast, not even at the dealership. Bruno shot him a glare sharp enough to cut steel. Claudio swallowed his words. The man began to disconnect the scanner, preparing to return it, but Mariana stopped him with a simple gesture. Wait. She walked closer, studying his face as if searching for hidden answers. Who are you? He hesitated. His lips parted as if to answer, but closed again. His eyes carried something old, a shadow of a pain Mariana recognized but couldn't name. Just Rogerio, he finally said, voice hoarse but steady. Rogerio what? Roberto pressed, still filming. A long pause, then a shrug. Doesn't matter. The tension thickened. Bruno crossed his arms, ready to seize control of the situation again. Look, Mariana, you can't seriously be trusting this guy. He shows up here out of nowhere, dressed like that, and suddenly we're supposed to believe he's some kind of genius? He is a genius. Mariana cut him off, her tone sharper than expected. And he just saved me thousands and my entire schedule today. The room went silent. Bruno clenched his jaw, suffocating under the weight of her words. And what do you want in return? Bruno snapped, voice laced with bitterness. Money? The man shook his head slowly. I told you. Just food. That answer hit harder than any insult. Roberto even lowered his phone, uncomfortable for the first time. Mariana's eyes softened. I'll get you something to eat. But Bruno wouldn't let go. His pride, already bruised, demanded retaliation. Careful, Senora. People like him. They're never just what they seem. Mariana turned to him, her patience gone. People like him? Or people like you? Bruno's face burned, but he couldn't answer. The man, Rogerio, avoided the confrontation, gathering the scanner carefully as if it were sacred. He placed it on the hood, stepped back, and prepared to leave. Wait. Mariana stopped him again, her voice carrying a strange urgency. Why did you help us, even after they mocked you? For the first time, he looked her directly in the eyes. His gaze was steady, but behind it lived an abyss of grief. Because everyone deserves a second chance. He said it simply, then turned toward the exit. The phrase hung in the air like an echo impossible to silence. Claudio lowered his eyes. Roberto stopped recording, and even Bruno, though unwilling to admit it, felt something stir inside. Mariana stood frozen, watching him walk away. That sentence wasn't just an answer, it was a confession. And from that moment on, she knew. This man carried a story that was far from over. That night, long after the Mercedes had left the shop running like new, Roberto uploaded the video. He didn't even need to think about the title. The scene had written it for him. Homeless man fixes Mercedes better than professional mechanics. The thumbnail froze on Rogerio's weathered face, focused as he handled the scanner, with Bruno scowling in the background. It was the perfect image. Contrast, drama, humiliation, redemption. Within hours, the views began to climb. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. By dawn, the comments were flooding in. No way this is real. The guy isn't homeless. He's a hidden master mechanic. The way he touched the engine is respect. This gave me chills. Who is he? Some laughed, others doubted, but a growing number saw something beyond entertainment. They saw a man who carried himself differently, a mystery begging to be unraveled. Back at the shop, Bruno was furious. You posted that, without asking me? Roberto shrugged, grinning. Relax, this is blowing up. Free publicity. Free humiliation, you mean? Bruno snapped. People are calling us idiots in the comments. Because we were idiots. Claudio muttered under his breath. Bruno shot him a look, but couldn't deny the sting of truth. Mariana, meanwhile, watched the video quietly on her phone, over and over, noticing details she hadn't caught in the moment, the way Rogerio's hands didn't tremble, the calm in his voice, the sadness buried in his eyes. Something about him pulled at her, something familiar yet distant. By midday, the video had crossed 50,000 views. Local pages began to share it. Memes popped up. Comparisons flooded in. Better than the dealership. Premium motors, premium clowns. Find this man, he's a legend. Bruno slammed his fist on the counter. This is ruining our reputation. Or saving it. Mariana countered softly. People are talking about your shop. They're curious. And they're asking about him. That last word hung heavy. Him. Rogerio. While they argued, Rogerio himself wandered the streets, unaware of the storm brewing online. He sat under the shadow of a viaduct, eating a sandwich slowly, savoring every bite as if it were more than food, as if it were dignity. A teenager nearby scrolled through his phone, eyes widening when the video autoplayed. He looked up, glanced at Rogerio, and whispered to his friend, "Dude, that's him. That's the guy." The recognition spread like fire. By evening, strangers were searching for him. Some wanted selfies, others wanted their cars fixed, and a few just wanted to know his story. Inside Mariana's home, she replayed the clip again. This time, something clicked. The way he leaned into the engine, the way he closed his eyes to listen. It wasn't just skill. It was something she had seen before. Her father, a mechanic, long gone, who used to say the same thing. Every engine has a voice. If you listen closely enough, it tells you what's wrong. Her heart pounded. Could it be coincidence? Or had fate placed a ghost from her past right in front of her? On the screen, Rogerio's final words echoed again. Because everyone deserves a second chance. And the world, millions of strangers watching from their phones and computers, agreed. The video was no longer just content. It was the spark of a legend reborn. Days passed. The video continued its unstoppable climb, spreading from local groups to national pages. Memes, debates, admiration, even journalists beginning to ask the same question, who is Rogerio? At Premium Motors, the atmosphere was heavy. Bruno's pride still burned, but even he couldn't ignore the crowds that now stopped by the shop, not to see them, but to ask about the mysterious mechanic. He just wandered in, fixed a car, and left. Bruno repeated to anyone who asked, his tone bitter. We don't know anything else. But Mariana wasn't satisfied with that answer. She couldn't shake the image from her mind. The man's eyes, his hands, the uncanny way he listened to the engine as if it were speaking to him. It was more than skill. It was memory. One afternoon, unable to resist any longer, she returned to the shop. Bruno and Claudia were struggling over a BMW, frustration written all over their faces. "Problems again?" she asked, stepping inside. Bruno straightened, startled. "Mrs. Mariana, you came back?" "I came to ask about him." She didn't bother with pretense. "The man who fixed my car. Do you know anything about him?" Roberto, who was tinkering with a toolbox, perked up immediately. "You saw my video? It's already past 50,000 views. People are going crazy. I saw it." Mariana's gaze was firm. "And I want to know who he really is." The three mechanics exchanged uneasy looks. Bruno shrugged. "Nobody knows. He shows up, disappears. Probably sleeps under some bridge." "That's not what I asked," Mariana pressed. "Where do you think he learned all that? The way he diagnosed, the way he handled the scanner? That's not someone who tinkered on the streets. That's someone who lived engines." Claudio hesitated, then muttered, "It's like he talks to the car, like it answers him." Mariana froze. Her chest tightened. "My father used to say that. Every motor has a voice. If you listen, it tells you what's wrong." The shop fell silent. Roberto tilted his head, curious. "Who was your father?" "A mechanic, a great one. He used to talk about a legend in racing, a driver who not only competed but adjusted his own cars. They called him something. Golden Hands. Bruno's eyes widened. Mãos de Ouro, Rogério Silva. The name landed like thunder. Roberto dropped the wrench he was holding. Claudio swallowed hard. That's impossible. Bruno shook his head quickly. Rogério Silva was a millionaire, sponsored internationally. Why would he be here, broke, living on the streets? Mariana felt her pulse race. She had read the articles years ago, after her father's death. She remembered the name, the photos, and now every gesture, every movement of that man seemed to fit. Bruno snatched his phone, typing furiously. He pulled up an old image. A man younger, hair darker, a trophy raised in one hand, eyes shining with a fire that matched perfectly the same tired eyes she had seen days ago. "No," Roberto whispered. "It can't be him." But Mariana already knew. The silence in her chest was answer enough. She looked at the photo, then closed her eyes and replayed his words in her mind. Because everyone deserves a second chance. When she opened them, her voice was trembling. It is him. The legend wasn't dead. He had only fallen further than anyone could imagine, and now fate had brought him back into their lives. The discovery was like a stone tossed into still water. The ripples spread quickly, touching everything around them. The shop was no longer the same. Every time the door creaked open, Bruno, Claudio and Roberto half expected the man to return. Every customer seemed to ask about him, and every night Mariana found herself searching online, digging deeper into old articles, racing archives and forgotten interviews. It didn't take long for the truth to emerge. Rogério Silva. The name was once on the lips of every racing fan in the 1990s. A prodigy of speed, a man who knew his car as if it were a living creature. They called him Mãos de Ouro, Golden Hands, not just for his victories, but for the way he adjusted and repaired his own engines, often better than his own team of mechanics. 3 national titles, international podiums, sponsorships, wealth, fame, and then silence. Mariana stared at the glowing screen late into the night. Headlines told the story that the world had half forgotten. Tragedy strikes champion Rogério Silva, wife and daughter killed in car accident. Golden Hands disappears after family loss. From hero to ghost, the vanishing of Brazil's rally legend. Her throat tightened as she read the details. His wife, his daughter. A single night that shattered everything. Witnesses said he blamed himself. He sold the team, vanished from the spotlight, and was never seen again. Some said he had moved abroad, others that he had died, but no one knew the truth, until now. She closed the laptop slowly, hands trembling. The memory of his eyes, tired, broken, yet still burning with an old fire, haunted her. He wasn't just a stranger. He was a man carrying a mountain of grief. The next morning she returned to the shop, her resolve sharper than ever. Bruno was pacing restlessly, while Roberto scrolled through his phone. The video hit 200,000 views. Roberto muttered. And look at these comments. People are starting to say he looks like Rogério Silva. Bruno froze. We can't let this get out. If people think he's really Golden Hands, the press will be all over us. And why not? Mariana's voice cut through. Don't you understand? If it is him, he's not just some homeless man who fixed a car. He's someone who once inspired an entire country. Claudio spoke quietly. What happened to him? Mariana hesitated, then said it aloud as if repeating a secret too heavy to keep. He lost his family in a car accident. After that, he disappeared. The shop went silent. Even Roberto lowered his phone. For a moment, all 3 men saw the stranger differently, not just as a humiliating reminder of their failure, but as a human being crushed by tragedy. Bruno exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Doesn't matter who he was, the man's broken. Or maybe, Mariana countered, her eyes fierce, he just needs someone to believe in him again. No one spoke. The hum of the fluorescent lights was the only sound, Outside, cars passed, horns blaring in the busy street, but inside that small shop, an unspoken decision was forming. The legend wasn't gone. He was out there, hiding in plain sight. And sooner or later, they would find him again. The decision was no longer a question. Mariana could not ignore the truth, and neither could the men at Premium Motors. The video had become too big, the rumors too loud. People were whispering that the man from the clip wasn't just a homeless mechanic. He was someone. And Mariana already knew who. "We need to find him." Her voice was steady, though her heart raced. "Before the world does." Bruno frowned. "And what then? Drag him back here? He doesn't want to be found." "Maybe not," Mariana admitted. "But if we don't try, we'll regret it." Roberto leaned forward, lowering his voice as though the truth itself required secrecy. "I've seen him before. He doesn't stay far. Sometimes I catch him walking near the viaduct, a few blocks away." Claudio nodded. "I've seen him too, always alone, always with that look, like he's listening to something nobody else can hear." Mariana grabbed her purse. "Then let's go." They walked through the crowded streets, the city buzzing with the rhythm of a late afternoon, past the shops, past the honking cars, past the curious faces who had begun to recognize them from the viral video. But their path led somewhere else, to the shadow of the viaduct where the city forgot its people. The smell hit first, damp concrete, urine, old smoke. A row of improvised tents stretched along the pillars. Shapes moved in the dim light, men and women bundled in rags, guarding their few possessions. Some looked up suspiciously as the group approached. "Excuse me?" Mariana said gently to an older man, his beard tangled, eyes sharp despite his age. "We're looking for someone. A man about 50, grey hair, tall. His name is Rogerio." The old man narrowed his eyes. "Why? He owe you something?" "No." She shook her head quickly. "We want to help him." The man studied her face, weighing her words. Finally he sighed and pointed deeper into the shadows. "Over there, but be careful. He's not like the others. Carries pain too heavy. Talks about a girl sometimes. A daughter." Mariana's chest tightened. She whispered a thank you and led the way. They walked between the tents until they saw him. Alone, sitting on the cold ground, back against the concrete pillar, a bottle empty at his side. In his hands, a crumpled photograph. His eyes, red and far away, fixed on it as though the rest of the world didn't exist. "Rogerio." Mariana's voice trembled as she stepped closer. He looked up slowly. Recognition took a moment, but then he nodded faintly. "The lady with the Mercedes. That's right." She crouched beside him, ignoring the dirt, ignoring the stares of her companions. "I came to find you." He quickly shoved the photo into his pocket, but not before she glimpsed it, a little girl, smiling, frozen forever in innocence. Mariana's throat tightened. She sat down next to him, lowering her voice. "I know who you are." His body stiffened, his jaw clenched. For a long time he said nothing. Then, with a bitter laugh that was more a sigh than joy, he murmured, "Not anymore." Bruno, Claudio and Roberto stood back, watching in silence. They didn't dare interrupt. Mariana's eyes shone with tears, but her voice was firm. "You're wrong. You are Rogerio Silva. You were Golden Hands, and you still are." He closed his eyes, leaning his head back against the pillar. "That man died the day they did." The silence was heavy. Mariana reached out, gently resting a hand on his arm. "Then let us help you live again. Not as who you were, but as who you can still become." His eyes opened, wet with tears he no longer had the strength to hide. For the first time, the walls he had built around his grief began to crack, and in that moment, beneath the forgotten bridge of a city that no longer cared, the legend of Rogerio Silva stirred again, fragile, broken, but not yet gone. The silence beneath the viaduct was broken only by the distant roar of cars above, a reminder of a world moving too fast to notice the lives hidden below. Rogerio sat slumped, his body heavy with years of sorrow, while Mariana knelt beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Behind them, Bruno, Claudio, and Roberto stood like uncertain witnesses, caught between disbelief and respect. None of them knew what to say, so they said nothing. Mariana drew in a steady breath. "You don't have to carry this alone anymore." Rogerio shook his head, his voice low and bitter. "You don't understand. People like me, we don't get second chances." Bruno finally spoke, his tone rough but softer than before. "Maybe not in racing, but in life. Everyone does." Rogerio let out a dry laugh. "Life? Mine ended years ago. What you see here is just the shadow of what was left." Mariana refused to let go. Shadows can still step into the light, but only if they choose to. Her words hung in the damp air. Rogerio's eyes searched hers, as if trying to find a reason to believe. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the photo he had tried to hide. His hands trembled as he unfolded it. She was 8. His voice cracked. "My daughter, Anna Beatriz. She believed I could fix anything, but I couldn't fix that night. I couldn't save them." His tears fell onto the photo, smudging the worn edges. For a long moment no one dared breathe. Mariana swallowed hard, her own eyes filling. "You can't bring them back, but you can honor them, by fixing what's still within reach, by fixing yourself." Rogerio's gaze dropped. "I don't deserve it." Claudio stepped forward, surprising even himself. "You saved that Mercedes. You saved Dr. Henrique's car when his kid needed the hospital. You saved people you didn't even know. If that's not worth something, then what is?" Roberto, phone finally tucked away, nodded. "You don't see it, but the world does. They're calling you a legend again." Rogerio rubbed his face with both hands, as if trying to wipe away the weight of the years. Mariana leaned closer. "Let us help you. We can get you treatment, a place to stay, clothes, a chance to work again, not as Golden Hands, not as the champion everyone knew, but as Rogerio, the man who still has more to give." For the first time, a flicker of something passed through his eyes. Doubt, yes, but also longing. He looked from face to face, Bruno torn between pride and admiration, Claudio hopeful, Roberto oddly respectful now, and Mariana unwavering in her conviction. "Why?" he whispered. "Why would you care?" Mariana's voice broke, but her words were steady. "Because I couldn't save my father, but maybe I can help save you." Her confession pierced the silence. Even Bruno lowered his eyes, uncomfortable with the raw truth in her tone. Rogerio stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he exhaled. His shoulders sagged, as though releasing a weight he had carried too long. "And if I fail again?" Mariana squeezed his hand gently. "Then we'll fail together. But at least you won't be alone." Tears slipped down his cheeks. For the first time in years, he didn't wipe them away. And though the shadows of the viaduct still clung to him, in that fragile moment, Rogerio Silva, Golden Hands, took the first step toward redemption. The news that Rogerio had come back to life moved faster than the wind. One morning, 3 vans pulled up in front of Premium Motors. Reporters spilled out with microphones, cameramen set up tripods, and onlookers formed a half-moon on the sidewalk. Bruno locked and unlocked the gate twice, undecided. Mariana took a breath and opened it. A volley of questions hit like gravel. "Do you confirm you are Rogerio Silva, 3-time rally champion? Why did you disappear? Is it true you lived on the streets? Are you going to race again?" Rogerio blinked under the glare, like a man facing high beams after years in the dark. He didn't run, but he didn't hide behind PR lines either. He said little, just enough to be human. "I lost my family. I lost my way. Now, I'm trying to fix what can still be fixed." The cameras captured truth, not spectacle, and truth on screen spreads even faster. That afternoon, when the dust settled, a dark sedan parked quietly. From the back seat stepped an elderly man with sharp eyes and a polished cane. Sebastião, Rogerio's former crew chief. Time had bent him a little, not broken him. They looked at each other like men finding an old mirror. "You took your time," the old man smiled. "I got lost," Rogerio answered, voice thick. They embraced for a long moment. The past entered the shop like a draft that shuffled the smell of fresh paint. It wrecked nothing, changed everything. Sebastio scanned the place, nodded to Bruno and Mariana, then set a leather folder on the bench. An offer. He kept it simple. The Artemis team is running the national series. They want you as technical consultant and test driver. No podium pressure, no tabloid circus. Serious work, lab precision, fine-tuning, exactly what only you do. The words fell like heavy bolts on a quiet floor. Bruno held his breath. Claudio let a ratchet rest. Roberto forgot his phone recording on the toolbox. Mariana lifted her chin, but her fingers trembled in her pocket. Rogerio didn't touch the envelope at first. He took 2 steps, as if he needed to see the proposal under a different light. The shop, the customers, the clinic, the simple apartment, the ritual of weak coffee at 6, all spun in his head like pistons in sync. Beneath it, a girl's voice, 8 years old, saying, "Go, Dad." "I don't know," he confessed. "I'm afraid of opening boxes that took years to close." "Fear is useful," Sebastio said. "Keeps us alert. What you can't do is let fear drive." Mariana came closer, careful with the space. "If you choose to go, the shop won't lose you. It'll gain you in a different way. You come back when you want, how you want, or you stay. It's your choice, and no one here measures you by it." Bruno cleared his throat, trying for levity. "If you need a pit crew, I'm an expert at tuning coffee now." Rogerio half smiled, though his eyes didn't. He ran his fingers over the gold letters on the envelope. Inside, contract, photos of the new car, test maps, calendars. The world that once felt like home called him back, not with blaring horns, but with low beams and a clear road. "I have one condition," he said suddenly. Sebastian raised an eyebrow. "If I go, Premium Motors goes with me. The shop becomes a school. Apprenticeships for kids, slots for people leaving treatment. Every daily rate I earn at the track turns into parts and scholarships. If I return with meaning." Sebastio's smile was full, proud. "That's why no one else will do." At day's end, Rogerio walked alone. The sun slid behind the buildings, painting the sheet metal orange. He wandered to the small cemetery in the next district and stopped at 2 modest headstones. From his pocket, he took the creased photo of Anna Beatrice and smoothed it gently. "They called me back, kiddo," he whispered. "Not to chase trophies, to tune cars, teach people, put purpose in what I know. I don't know if I should go. I'm afraid I'll become a ghost of what I was and lose you again in the noise." The wind moved the leaves like flags waving a checkered finish. He closed his eyes. Cockpit, gloves, fuel, the vibration traveling from the wheel into bone, and above all he listened, not to an engine, but to his own breathing settling into rhythm. Back at the shop, Mariana waited by the door. She didn't ask. She handed him a glass of water. "What does your ear say?" she risked, smiling as if she knew. "That the road is open," he said. "But the right track isn't the one that shines. It's the one that takes people with it." Next morning, before rolling up the shutters, he gathered the team. He spoke briefly. "I got an offer, not to leave you, to multiply what we do. If I accept, I'll split the week between the shop and tests. In return, Artemis funds tools, courses, scholarships. The shop becomes a school. And no one who needs a second chance waits outside." Roberto raised a hand. "And if it goes wrong, we recalibrate." Rogerio grinned. "Engines and lives aren't that different." Sebastian returned in the afternoon with the final contract. The pen trembled in Rogerio's hand, not from doubt, but from the weight of invisible pages not written there. Nights under bridges, bottles, the empty seat beside him, a sandwich as dignified pay. He signed slowly, breathing between first and last name. When he looked up, there was no party, just relief. The old chief patted his shoulder. "Welcome back, Golden Hands. Don't call me that out here. Rogerio answered softly. "Out here, I'm just Rogerio. In there, I listen." On the sidewalk, someone began to clap, then another. It wasn't stadium frenzy. It was neighborhood recognition. People who'd watched a man fall and stand, now hoping the next corner would be smooth. Night arrived with the smell of rain and promises. On the bench, the contract rested beside a worn 10mm wrench, and for the first time in many years, past and present fit in the same pocket of his worksuit. 1 year later, Premium Motors was no longer just a repair shop. The sign had changed. Premium Motors Technical School. Below it, a subtitle glowed in blue letters, "Second chances for every engine and every life." Inside, the hum of drills and compressors was joined by laughter and the voices of students. Young people in grey uniforms leaned over open hoods, notebooks on their benches. Former addicts, ex-inmates, kids who once sold candy at stoplights, now they worked in pairs, learning how to read sensors, replace parts, and diagnose problems. At the center of it all was Rogerio. His hands no longer trembled, they guided. He didn't just fix cars anymore, he taught others to listen. "What do you hear?" he asked a nervous student working on a Volkswagen. "Just noise, sir." "No." Rogerio closed his eyes, tilting his head. "That's the sound of a clogged injector. Try again. Listen." The car speaks. The boy tried again, slower this time, and finally smiled. "I hear it now." Rogerio clapped him on the shoulder. "Good. Every engine has a voice, just like every person. You only need patience to hear it." The words spread through the school like a motto. They became posters on the walls, etched into notebooks, whispered among students who were learning not just about mechanics, but about themselves. Meanwhile, Artemis honored its promise. Twice a week, Rogerio tested cars at the track, his feedback so sharp that engineers treated every note as gospel. He didn't crave podiums anymore. What mattered wasn't the stopwatch, but the apprentices who cheered from the stands, watching the legend they now called teacher. On weekends, Rogerio walked alone to the small cemetery. He carried fresh flowers, white lilies, and laid them at 2 graves. Beside him, Mariana sometimes stood in silence, her presence steady but gentle. "We're still fixing things, kiddo," he whispered to Anna Beatrice's stone. "Engines, people, and me too. You were right. I could fix anything. I just didn't know the hardest part was fixing myself." The wind rustled the leaves above, like an answer he longed for. He touched the photo he always carried, now smooth from years in his pocket. The world hadn't stopped calling him Golden Hands, but in his heart, the title no longer meant speed or trophies. It meant second chances. One late afternoon, he gathered everyone, students, mechanics, neighbors, in the renovated workshop. Cameras were there too, but he didn't speak for them. He spoke for the circle of people who had lifted him from the shadows. 2 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I thought the only sound left for me was silence. But you showed me that silence isn't the end. It's the pause before another start. He raised a small spanner, grease-stained but shining under the lights. Engines and people break down, but both can be rebuilt. That's what we do here. We rebuild. Applause filled the space. Some students cried. Bruno clapped the loudest, proud to stand as a partner, no longer a rival. Mariana smiled with tears in her eyes, while Roberto recorded everything, not to humiliate, not to chase clicks, but to preserve a piece of history. That night, when the crowd left, Rogerio stood alone for a moment, wiping his hands on an old rag. He looked at the rows of students' cars, at the banners with the school's motto, and at the quiet sky beyond the windows. He whispered once more, "Every engine has a voice, every life too, and as long as I can listen, I'll keep fixing both." And for the first time in decades, Rogerio Silva, Golden Hands, no longer feared the silence, because he knew he had filled it with something greater, purpose.